Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. We appreciate you being here, listening in as we react to the AP poll. AP Top 25 dropped Sunday afternoon, and we have thoughts. I have thoughts about some SEC teams that do not belong, and we have Jeff here to give us a bit of a different perspective. Zach and I have been pretty lockstep in our AP Top 25, I guess not AP, in our Top 25s. Jeff has a little bit of a different opinion, and I'm excited to go through that together. Jeff, was this your first time making a top 25 this season?
No, I've done it on my own, but I did like weeks 2 through 5, and then the last 2 weeks I didn't. So it really made it interesting, JR, to like for the first time in 3 weeks do it. It's not easy to do. God, you get into that. Now, did that team play another? But yeah, this should be fun.
Oh yeah, it's more difficult this season than it's been in a while, and so I don't go after the AP voters as much. I just try to kind of pick apart this, that, and the other, and I do try to remind people this is an average. This is not like somebody going through and picking each one and like it's one person voting. This is an average, and so sometimes it doesn't always work out the right way, but it's interesting how it does that. So let's go ahead, bring up the AP poll here. I will go ahead and give it to our podcast listeners really quick, and then we'll go to Jeff for his reaction. Ohio State stays at number 1. Indiana sets another program record as they move up to number 2. Awesome for IU. Followed by Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia at number 5. At number 6, you have Oregon, Georgia Tech moving up to number 7. Ole Miss, Miami, and Vanderbilt gets into the top 10, sneaks in there at number 10. BYU, the undefeated Cougars at number 11, followed by Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Missouri at number 16. Virginia, Tennessee, South Florida, Louisville, LSU stays in there after losing to Vanderbilt. And then at number 21, Cincinnati moves on up. Texas, Illinois, Arizona State. Finishing off the pack is the Michigan Wolverines at number 25. Jeff, what was your first reaction to seeing the AP poll?
Yeah, a lot of SEC teams in here. What's funny, JR, is so for everyone know, I graduate of Indiana in 1990. I am an Ohio State fan since I was a little kid as well, so I'm a little bit weird. So I'm living in those. Look at this. Here's my first reaction, actually, JR. Ohio State fan since 1979 when I saw Art Schlichter on the cover of Sports Illustrated after Ohio State beat Michigan. So that was 1979. I am 58 years old. Went to Indiana, graduated in 1990. In Indiana, we were actually pretty good in football at the time with Bill Mallory as coach, but since then, we all know the story, right? Indiana all-time losing his program. So my first reaction is this real? Ohio State number 1, JR, in Indiana number 2. My 2 teams, and they're going to be on a collision course probably to play in the Big Ten championship game. Crazy. And they could play each other again in the playoffs. I mean, truly, and I can tell you other Indiana fans are like, they're still in shock, right? I mean, at this point, they're not shocked Indiana's good and not top 25 because they believe in Cignetti that much. But the fact that we're even better than we were last year. So that's my first reaction. And then how many SEC teams are in here? I did make a comment to my Georgia friends. I'm on a text string. I said, Ole Miss, they never should have been ranked 5th. It's a good win for Georgia because any conference win is good. But I was like, Ole Miss they didn't deserve to be number 5. They beat a bunch of teams by like just a few points, struggled with Kentucky, played what was it? Oregon State, JR, was it? Or Oregon State or Washington State, and won by like 3 or 5 or 7 or something.
Yeah, Washington State, 24-21.
Yeah. So, in general, for everyone to know, I'm not quite as big of a basher on the SEC as much as JR and Zach, but there are certain teams I think that are frauds. I don't think Ole Miss is great, for example. And I think LSU is also a pretender. There's others that I think are really good, JR. Like, I really think A&M is really good. I watched the whole game at Notre Dame. That game came down to one play, by the way. I mean, literally, like that play in the end zone, I think it was a 4th down. But I'm impressed with them. In Alabama, I am a believer too. One game early on can be deceptive. So I know everyone said, well, they lost to Florida State, how good they can be if Florida State's 3-4. It's the first game of the year. Teams evolve through the year. So Alabama is legit good. We know they had a ton of talent. And the difference is the Ty Simpson just balling out, way better quarterback than Milroe. So I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, JR, but I would say some of these SEC teams deserve it. Others, not so much, I guess, would be my reaction. And then I'm shocked IU and Ohio State, my two teams, are the top two teams.
Yeah, I mean they should be there, right?
And
So it's not shocking because they should be, but I understand what you're saying, like the history and the relevance and stuff like that, and the branding versus some of the other football schools that are up there, Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M. It is just kind of shocking to see Indiana up above all those. Fisherman says one AP voter had Indiana at 21. Where did you see that at, Fisherman? I pulled up the posters page and I didn't see anybody that had him at 21, but boy, if somebody had him at 21, they gotta lose. Maybe they lost their vote right away when they did that. That's the way that should work if you have Indiana at number 21. But that's honestly pretty crazy if that happens. So, yeah, the very, very interesting how this AP poll has kind of played out here. I did appreciate that they notched LSU down 10 spots there for losing to Vanderbilt, because that's what they did to Michigan, right? Michigan lost to USC, and they went down, I think it was 11 spots. And so they do have some consistency there with moving LSU down. I appreciate that. I appreciate that Louisville got moved up there. I still do not understand why Tennessee is ranked. I don't understand how you can have Tennessee ranked, but you can't have Illinois ranked up there. To me, Tennessee is the Illinois of the SEC, where they are not a contender in the conference, but their two best losses they're getting too much credit for. And I say too much credit because a team like Illinois, who has lost the number 1 and number 2 team in the country, is not getting credit for that. Right? So to me, it's like if you're going to have credit to Tennessee, you need to give credit to Illinois in that same way. I understand why Illinois isn't getting as much credit as Notre Dame, because Notre Dame just beat USC. But at the same time, Illinois also beat USC. So why is Illinois not getting as much credit as Notre Dame? I understand it with the brand at a certain point, but at the same time, it's like, how much different is Notre Dame's resume from Illinois'? Notre Dame lost by closer score margins against teams that are up there, but still the losses on paper still show that Illinois played better teams than Notre Dame played, and they have a common bets to win, in my opinion. So, do you have any thoughts on that, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, it gets into the, if you lose close, how much credit do you get to that? I do think Illinois, how much they lost to Indiana by, and you can explain it. You can't explain it where it was at Indiana. It was kind of like this running freight train, and then the secondary being so beat up, and then you just, it's not like Illinois mentally quit. You're still battling, but when you can't win anymore, something changes. So I think that's what's driving that, JR. But it's almost like you wish for all these teams you could take one game and just throw it out, right? Because and it's the same thing, even if you got the one big win, that doesn't mean you're a great team. It just means everything aligned that day to get that big win, right? I think we all get caught up into that a little bit. So if you're a supporter of Illinois, you would give them grace on the Indiana, but I think a lot of voters won't forget losing by 53 is part of the problem.
Well, it's an issue because like Illinois doesn't get the grace of the one loss like Alabama does, right? People look at that loss, which is a bad loss. That was a bad loss to Florida State. Not only did Florida State beat you, but you did not look like you wanted to be there. That was a really bad loss for Alabama, and just everybody acts like it doesn't happen. Why does that loss for Alabama get consistently brought up? Not consistently brought up. Sorry, nobody brings up that loss, but the loss for Illinois against Indiana gets consistently brought up time and time again when Illinois actually had a good reason with why they lost that much. Still give Indiana credit. I'm not saying you don't give Indiana credit, but it just reminds me me of how much the bias is there for the SEC. The SEC gets credit when they win big games. They don't lose any credit when they lose some of those big games or they lose to an opponent that they shouldn't lose to. Texas has lost to Florida, but because they beat Oklahoma, they're back in the top 25. Okay, I understand Texas, but
Yeah.
Texas does not have a loss on their schedule or Illinois does not have a loss on their schedule like Texas. Florida just fired their head coach. Texas lost to them 2 weeks ago. They should not be above Illinois, in my opinion.
No,
Or if they are going to be above Illinois, you need to have some consistency there to where Illinois is not dragged down for their one loss because Texas and Alabama don't seem to be dragged down for their losses.
yeah. And to your point, Jared, Illinois, remember, they didn't play last week and they re-entered, so it was the old
right.
teams lost in front of. To your point, I would agree. They should have never fallen out of the top 25 at all. You know what I mean? I mean that is a true statement. Michigan, they did fall out last week, and again, it's because they lost so badly to USC. But I still had them as a title contender, so I still felt they are top 25 like. I kind of felt they shouldn't have even fallen out either. If, to your point, JR, if Michigan were an SEC team after they lost to USC, they would have not fallen out of the top 25 last week.
Yeah, if USC was an SEC team, they would have been in the top 20 with their record and what they've done.
Way higher, yeah.
So, I mean, that was part of the issue too, is that USC isn't getting credit. And that's the hard part about having this conversation a lot of times, because I go to people and I say, well, who has Ole Miss beat? And they say, well, they beat number 4 LSU. When did LSU deserve that? They beat Clemson, who turned out to be awful, and they don't have a good win on their resume. Their best win is South Carolina. It's like I pointed out last week, and everybody wants to dog me for it now because Washington lost, and that's fine, but it doesn't change what I pointed out, which is that 3 different SEC teams, their best win, and still 2 of them, is South Carolina, who is a 3-4 football team. Missouri, why are they ranked up there in the top 15? Their best win is against a bad South Carolina team. Same thing with LSU. You could argue, okay, Vanderbilt got a good win this weekend. Okay, I get that, but should LSU have ever been as high as they were before? Like, it's just kind of the same compounding stuff that happens again and again and again. And since South Carolina had a whole lot of hype going into the season, they were highly ranked. They lost, but they don't seem to lose out on that. On the other hand, Ohio State, everybody wants to say they haven't played anybody, but nobody wants to talk about how LSU hasn't played anybody. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I mean, I think again, your point, USC, if they're 5-2 right now, just lost to a tough Notre Dame team. Like if they were an SEC team, they would still be in the top 25 for sure. Now they're just outside. They're just barely. They're 26th right now. But the point is, they should be after Illinois because they lost to them, but before Michigan. And basically, Illinois, SC, and Michigan should be in there, maybe, but higher up, right?
Yeah, I have Illinois, USC, and Michigan, and we'll go to mine just right after this. I have them right outside of the top 10. Admittedly, I might have them a little too high, but with having some different teams up there that have 2 losses and 2 good losses, I feel like those are teams that should all kind of be together, right? So, I mean, I explained this last week, but
yeah, I'm laughing. I just said they should be higher, and actually I have all 3 of them in the top 25, but just barely in the top 25, so it goes against what I just said. But it also shows, when you look at these teams 15 through 25, it's hard to distinguish between them, right? Wouldn't you say? I mean, that's why, but USC, at least in mine, is 25th, because I don't think they should drop off. But they're right there.
One comment really quick, and then we'll get to my top 25. Monthly Short says it was like when IU lost by 10 in the playoffs, and everyone talks about it, but nobody talks about Tennessee and Georgia getting absolutely bodied. Yes, and everybody talked about how Indiana lost so terribly to Ohio State, and while yes, they did, what was the score of that game, 38-17 or 38-14 or something like that.
20 or
nobody ever brings up that Indiana had more rushing yards in that game. Nobody ever brings up that there were 2 special teams issues that happened in that game, and those were 2 of the reasons why Ohio State kind of pulled ahead. Again, I'm not taking anything away from Ohio State. Ohio State had the opportunities, and they capitalized on them. That's what a good team does. But I don't think that an SEC team gets dinged for 2 special team issues. People will make excuses for them. But of course, the lowly IU brand, they get raked over the coals. They can't beat a big team. They're terrible because their punter fumbled a snap, and their punter punted it to the wrong side of the field, and Caleb Downs took it back for a touchdown. So yeah. All right. So my top 25 is, let me bring it up here. I have Ohio State, Indiana at number 1 and 2. Shocker. Don't come at me, Big Ten fans, but I do have Alabama at number 3. Again, I'm not saying that Alabama should be held to that Florida State loss super big, but I am saying that if you're not going to hold Alabama to that big loss, I don't think you should hold other teams to a big loss as well, which I think I've done pretty consistently in here. I have Oregon at number 4, followed by Georgia. I'm not as high on Texas A&M as some other people are. I like the offensive line. I think they do some things well, but I am still concerned with some of the close games that they've played against inferior competition. So I have them at number 6, followed by Georgia Tech, Miami, Notre Dame. I have at number 9, followed by BYU at 10. Call me crazy, but I have the Fighting Illini at number 11. Oklahoma, Michigan, Vanderbilt, USC. Number 16, I have Texas Tech. Then Louisville, South Florida, Cincinnati, Iowa at number 20, Utah at 21, followed by Minnesota, Arizona State. Rank Northwestern. Do it. All right. Rank them. Number 24. Make it happen. And then I still have Washington in there in my top 25 because Washington has lost to a top 15 team and the number 1 team in the nation in my rankings. And they still have a win over Maryland, who has been in close games. They've not looked as impressive lately, but has been in close games. And I still think that Maryland win is a more impressive win than the South Carolina win that Missouri and LSU has.
That's strong, Jay. So you have 10 Big Ten teams. Is that right?
I do, yeah. And how many SEC teams do I have? 1, 2, 3. I really should count this. I'm on a Big Ten podcast. I really should not have more SEC. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Is that how many?
What? Okay.
No, 5. Yeah, I only have 5 SEC teams in there, if I can count. So what's your reaction here, Jeff? Tear it apart if you want.
Yeah, well, here's the hard thing where it's really hard to tear apart. We don't have enough crossover games for us to really evaluate. Can I really say you're wrong, JR? There's no way Northwestern 24, no way Minnesota. There's not enough crossover between the SEC teams for us to judge it. So that's the frustration with it. And also why we get frustrated when we see all the SEC teams up there, right, JR? I do think Vandy at 14. I have Vanderbilt at 7. So I feel Vanderbilt is being Indiana'd this year. In other words, everyone's like, oh, it's Vanderbilt. They can't be that good. And it's been slow to raise them up. They've only lost 1 game to Alabama. And we've seen, yeah, they had the bad first loss, but Alabama is a different team as they've built confidence and everything. And they've won since that Florida State loss, right? And so I just put Vanderbilt higher. Now, do I think they have the depth and everything to make a long run in the playoffs and everything? Probably not. But I love how tough they are. Diego Pavia is a tough kid. You know, he's 32 years old and going to get his AARP card in a couple of years here. But anyway, so I would I do think they're legit and everything, and I would put them higher. Beyond that, I don't have any major issues because I don't get as upset on the AP polls because ultimately the committees, I believe, has done a good job and don't necessarily use the AP poll. So in the end, it won't matter. But I get why people get upset with the AP poll because the SEC uses it, and like your Peter Burns of the world who covers the SEC, they use it to say, oh, listen, Georgia must be way better because they beat 5 or 6 ranked teams, and Indiana doesn't even have a ranked team the rest of the year. Well, if the AP poll were better, that wouldn't be the case, right? So it matters. That's a long-winded, but it won't matter for the committee in the end. I really do think they look at other metrics and everything. So no major thing here.
Yeah. I think my point on Vanderbilt with why I have them a little bit lower, because I'm trying to be cautious of that as well. I don't want to Indiana a team and keep them lower.
Right.
But I do look at that Vanderbilt team and say, okay, they lost to Alabama, and that was at Alabama, so I do need to be cautious of that. But Vanderbilt also has the same issue that I have with LSU and Missouri, which is that their best win is South Carolina. So a team that is, I think they're 6-1 right now. A team that is 6-1, who, yes, they did beat the brains in of Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech, but that's also not a good team. They beat the brains in of Georgia State. They beat the brains in of Utah State. They beat South Carolina, and very convincingly, by the way, as well. But it's also like how high can I rank a team like that, right? I did not have BYU even in the top 20 last week, but they got that win over Utah, who I think is a good team, and so I knocked them up to 10. Maybe a little bit too high, but for an undefeated team, I think you need to be in at least contention for the top 10 at this point in the season, even if you've played not a very good schedule, just because I think it's really tough to be able to get there, especially if you're in a power conference. So I understand what you're saying there about Vanderbilt. I do think we need to be cautious of that, but I think we also need to consider who are their wins. And right now, their best win is South Carolina. Well, they just beat LSU, but LSU's in the same scenario, right?
Yeah.
South Carolina, the best win,
Yeah.
is what I'm kind of getting at there. And then the other thing I'll talk about is that Dave says I would put Pitt over my Gophers, and that is a team that I did not consider. So I appreciate you bringing them up for me, Dave. I did look at their schedule. I don't know if they have a great win on there, but they did lose to two teams like the Gophers did. They did beat Syracuse and Florida State, but Syracuse doesn't have their starting quarterback right now. So I'm not going to say I wouldn't do that. I probably need to look into that one a little bit more. So I appreciate you bringing them up, Dave. And then Billy says, don't go public with my Northwestern ranking. maybe I shouldn't. That'll get the SEC fans really upset. Oh, and the other thing, I'm going to start using this. If you see Peter Burns out there talking about ranked wins again, go ahead and remind them that UCLA has more ranked wins than Tennessee and Missouri does. See how they react to that.
But they do, man. Believe me. And they even have I listen to the Big Ten Network or whatever, and the radio show, and they'll bring in SEC for a crossover. And Burns is always talking about, now how many ranked teams are left on their schedule. He's so like trying to make it sound like he's being neutral and really looking at things, but yeah,
he's not. All right, Jeff, let's get to your top 25. You can go ahead and list it off there, and touch on any teams that you want to highlight.
Yeah. So I have Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, and I do agree that Indiana has the best win. Oregon, and you could make an argument for Indiana number 1. I wouldn't worry about too much if that happened. I just believe Ohio State, that defense has just been crazy good. And then with the development of Julian Sayin, I like them at 1. Now, I mentioned A&M earlier, undefeated. They still have a lot to prove, JR, but I just think that win at Notre Dame is looking better and better. So them at 3, Bama is a different team than they were. And I could maybe put Oregon over Alabama. I mean, I almost did that, but I have Oregon over Georgia, and it's reversed in the AP. So Vanderbilt 7. I didn't want to punish Miami too much for one loss because I do believe Louisville's a good team, and I know one thing for sure: Jeff Brom is a hell of a coach, and Penn State should be looking at Jeff Brom as one. I'm not saying he should be the coach, but that should be a guy you're talking. To me, you want to hire a coach that has a proof of winning at multiple stops. That's Signetti. It wasn't winning at one stop. It's everywhere he's been, he's won. And so that's why he's been so successful at Indy, or one of the reasons that's been a successful hire. So Georgia 6, Vanderbilt 7. We talked about them earlier. I think they deserve that, just like Indiana did last year. They got the tough part of their schedule coming, though, JR, the tougher part of their schedule, to your point. Miami 8, Texas Tech 9. I mean, I was surprised they lost to Arizona State, but Arizona State could be an evolving team. They lost to Mississippi State earlier this year, but now maybe they're getting better and getting the legs under them. But I still believe Texas Tech is a super talented team. Georgia Tech, they just continue to find ways to win. I don't know how great they are, but they're a tough, hard-nosed team. I love their coach, and they have a tough, hard-nosed quarterback in Haynes King. Oklahoma hanging in there at 11. I think you're going to see them make a fall from here. The schedule is tough and great defense, but if they could run the ball better, I would like their chances to stay high. I have Notre Dame 12th. So did the AP poll, JR. I do think I hate over punishing people for losses, and I know you need to win games now that they're winning again. I feel comfortable putting them there. BYU at 13. To be honest, I haven't even watched BYU, JR. And all these teams, I watch the Big Ten mostly, so it is harder for me to do this. I'm not watching a bunch of SEC games because I'm concentrating on the Big Ten. Ole Miss, I begrudgingly put at 14. I never thought they should have been 5. But they have won games, right? They've only lost the one. Frankly, I think they should have beat Georgia. It was damn close to doing that. Missouri at 15. And I haven't seen a lot of them, but again, I like Drinkwitz a lot as a coach. I think he's really good. Virginia 16, haven't really watched them. Tennessee begrudgingly kept them 17. JR, you probably don't like that. Louisville's one to watch though. If they're beating Miami, and Brahm's a heck of a coach, so and they've got Miller Moss. He's an experienced quarterback, so don't forget that. Cincinnati's been so impressive at 19. South Florida at 20. I have Arizona State 21. Then hitting the Big Ten teams, Illinois 22, Texas 23, and only hanging on because of the Oklahoma win. They struggled this week. I saw a stat someone had that coming off the Red River game, both teams really struggle from that. It's such an emotional game. So if next week Texas struggles again, it's like, what in the hell? I mean, but I don't, if you had them outside the top 25, I actually wouldn't complain too much. And then Michigan 24 and USC 25. Again, as mentioned earlier, you could make an argument Illinois, Michigan, and USC all should be higher up, but it's just very hard. This 12, maybe from 13 to 25, very hard to rank these teams in my view.
Yeah, it is. It is difficult. I did not have Texas in my top 25, and I'm not necessarily going to say that I don't like that you have Tennessee there at 17. I just want consistency more than anything. I can see different arguments for different teams, but my biggest thing is just be consistent with what you have, right? If you're going to give a team credit for this, make sure you give another team credit for that. And I think that's kind of the way it needs to operate more than anything else. So as long as somebody's consistent, I'm not going to come at them too much. If they have like Indiana at number 20, I might, be upset about that. But but you don't have that, Jeff. So you're good. All right, let's get to college football playoff predictions here. My prediction now, the top 25 is the way I think things should be. My college football playoff prediction is much more of the way I think things will play out. So, although, my stuff doesn't necessarily align with my opinions of the top 25, like I have Illinois high up there. I don't think Illinois is going to make the playoffs. If they went out, I think they have a chance to sneak in there at 11 or 10. I think they should be higher than that, but I do not think that Illinois. Like I said, I do not think Illinois is going to be a highly seeded team in the playoffs if they win out. They just don't seem to have enough love out there. So at number 12, I have USF South Florida. At number 11, I have Ole Miss, even though I am not super high on Ole Miss. The AP poll is, and so I think the College Football Playoff Committee will be as well. Number 10, I have Georgia Tech. They have a pretty cake schedule to finish off the year, and I think that they maybe drop one, but even if they do that, they're so high up there, they're probably going to stay in. Texas A&M, I have them losing a game or two to finish the year, so I have them at number 9. Texas Tech, I think that their loss to Arizona State is going to hurt them a little bit, so they're not going to be in the top 5, but they were kind of trending there before. Georgia at number 7, I think they'll get a little bit of the brand there, being able to beat Ole Miss and stuff like that. It's going to help them out. Oregon, I have at number 5. I think Oregon wins out to finish the season. Notre Dame at number 4. I see them finishing out, winning the season. Alabama at 3. Indiana at 2. Ohio State at 1. Interesting conversation I had with Bud Elliott on Twitter today. He believes that they will actually hurt teams in the seeding if they lose the conference championship game this year. That was my thing where he had Indiana at 4 and Ohio State at 1. But no, I apologize. He felt like that Indiana's schedule is not going to be strong enough, and that the strength of record kind of stuff, the committee is going to favor Alabama and Texas A&M. He didn't say that was his opinion. He was just saying that's how he thinks the committee is going to play it out. So interesting stuff there. I do have some concerns about that with the ranked wins and stuff like that, because Peter Burns, a lot of people do like his stuff, but we'll see how that plays out. So maybe I should adjust Indiana, but for now I have Indiana, Ohio State at 1 and 2. Jeff, any thoughts on this before we get to yours?
Yeah, I would say, on the whole conference championship game, to me, it's how did you look and how close of a game was it? Like, if it was clearly you got it handed to you, you should be kind of punished for it and drop down. But if you were right there, then maybe a slight punishment, but nothing big. That's just the way I look at all
Yeah,
these
the
teams.
hard part is that if you do start punishing them, teams aren't going to want to play that game, right?
Yeah.
They're going to
Yeah,
say,
right.
we're already ranked in, so let's just not play that game. But if you
Yeah.
don't punish them, then you have people that are like, okay, why did we even watch the game, right?
Yeah. So how you lose matters.
Right.
So
and that's the premise of why they want to grow the playoffs to like 24, 28 teams now, is because they want to have games that weekend of the conference championship games, but they also recognize that those games don't mean anything. I think a lot of people kind of overlook that when they look at the 24, 28 team playoff and just say, oh, adding more teams, we hate that. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily in favor of adding more teams either, but I do think it's important to recognize that's what they're thinking there, is we can play games that weekend instead of having the conference championship games.
So let me ask you, having Notre Dame at 4, to me, that clearly says Notre Dame obviously will not lose a game the rest of the year. I guess that's a given. If they lost the third, that would knock them out. But for them to be 4, you're probably implying those other teams are either going to mostly have 2 losses as well, or some might have even a third, right? Like you're saying there's not going to be 4 teams with 1 loss, probably. Is that right? Because if there are 4 teams with 1 loss, then Notre Dame probably wouldn't be 4th.
Yeah, so I think Notre Dame's going to get some credit for wins here to end out the season. Pitt is a 2-loss team that if they win there at Pitt, I think they could get a little bit of credit there. Navy is currently undefeated. I think they could get some credit for beating Navy. And then, Stanford and Syracuse to end the season, I don't think they get very much credit there. But I just think there's too much parity right now in college football to guarantee that all of these teams are going to only lose 1 more game or anything like that. Like, I think you could see a 9-3 team get in over an Ole Miss or over a Georgia Tech. I don't think it's likely, but we also need to see what the rankings for the College Football Playoff Committee looks like when they come out with their first rankings before we can kind of, know for sure. But I think Notre Dame's going to get credit for beating USC, playing Texas A&M and Miami, and the committee in the past has not taken into account who did you beat. You be over them. They did in the 14 playoff, but they didn't last year. So I'm kind of going off that same idea that if Notre Dame just keeps winning, they're going to get up there higher in the standings.
Gotcha. Yep.
So, all right, Jeff, last thing, and then we'll get out of here. Here is your college football playoff prediction.
Yeah, and just so as far as the 12 teams, Jared, the only difference in the teams is you had Ole Miss in, I have Missouri in. And I looked at their schedule, and it's not as difficult as some other teams. So that's why I have Missouri 10. So everyone know I have Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, and that would imply Indiana loses to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game and plays a close game. Otherwise, Indiana won't be 2, probably. I guess it does depend on whether the other teams, if they have 2 losses and Indiana 1 loss, then okay, I take that back. If the 3 and 4 teams have 2 losses and Indiana got beat fairly soundly and had 1 loss, they still have a chance to be number 2. But then I have Alabama number 3, so that implies they win the SEC. Not that that's a requirement to be 3, because they're not having conference champs have to be at the top 4. And then Texas A&M, really. So Texas A&M is likely to to be in the SEC championship game against Alabama. So basically, you have 2 Big Ten teams and 2 SEC teams getting the byes. Then from there, I have Miami at 5th. So that means I think Miami is going to win the ACC in essence. I do think that. Number 6 is Oregon. So they're right up there. Think about that. 3 Big Ten teams in the top 6. And that really supports how we're saying, the Big Ten, the best teams. We have the best teams in America. Our top teams are better than the top teams for other conferences. 7 would be Texas Tech. So I'm pretty high in them. That would be the Big 12 winner. They are my sole representative for the Big 12. So, hey, Big 12, you might want to think about taking that deal of getting 2 teams in, guaranteed. And then number 8 is Georgia. So I think some losses are coming Georgia's way, but not like a bunch, enough to stay in. Notre Dame would be number 9. And there, that would imply some of these teams are going to have 2 losses and maybe even a 1 loss hanging in there potentially. I don't know, but so it's not going to be like a bunch of 3-loss teams. Otherwise, Notre Dame would be higher than that. 10, I have Missouri, like we talked about earlier. So that's 4 SEC teams in, unfortunately. But I do think, they're going to like to see at the end of the day, at the end of the year, they're going to have a lot of good wins ultimately to make this list. And then finally, 11, I have Georgia Tech. So just like you had, I think we had them in relatively similar spots there. And then South Florida at number 12. So really not a ton of differences with yours there. Just from a matchup perspective, I find it interesting. You would get a Notre Dame versus Georgia rematch. And then the winner would play Ohio State. Zing, zing. Those are rating bonanzas there. Versus Indiana would get real lucky here. As a 2 seed, they would play the winner of Missouri and Texas Tech. Now, I consider that a win for Indiana, right? Like a real good chance to beat those 2 teams. But a lot has to happen here for that to shake out. But I'm pretty aligned with you on this one, JR. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on this. I can definitely see Missouri as well. I like Eli Drinkowitz there. I just don't think they've played anybody for my top 25, but seeing the way the committee kind of treats them, or the AP poll kind of treats them, I could see the committee treating them a similar way as well. Notre Dame is interesting. Are they going to get credit for those wins? Are they not? I think, mine shows that they would get credit. Yours shows that maybe they don't get as much credit, because I think in order for them to be number 9 seed in the playoffs, they probably have to win out as well. So just really makes it all that more interesting for when we get the very first college football playoff rankings in November. I think that's going to be, November 3rd or something like that. So it's going to be really interesting when we get that. That'll really help us understand kind of the playoff prediction stuff. And it'll become less about predicting what's going to happen based on other people's opinions and more on what do we think is going to happen as the season plays out for some of this team. So
I think
very interesting stuff.
Probably just to say the disappointing thing is 3 Big Ten teams when we really like 4. I'm looking at the other teams. I just don't see the 4th. It's possible, but
I wanted to put a 4th Big Ten team in there, but I said I was just like, I don't think any of them are getting enough respect at this point. Even if Illinois wins out, I think they're a fringe, 11-10 team because they're not getting very much respect. If Michigan wins out, I think that they do make it in, but you would see Ohio State take a drop if that happens, because they would have to beat Ohio State in order for that to happen. So, it's interesting how it all kind of plays out and trying to figure it out. And then the other team is also USC, which if USC wins out, they would be much higher in there because they would have to beat Oregon to get up there, and that would be a really good win for them, as it would be for Michigan.
That would be the path. Actually, it would. I still think Oregon. Who would they have beaten then? The problem with Oregon then is that Penn State damn game. I mean, the Penn State thing is really screwing things up, JR, because people are talking about Indiana, Ohio State. If Penn State were still really good, they'd be saying, ooh, and we still get to see Indiana and Ohio State get really challenged against Penn State, and now we're not. So that's really hurt the conference. Penn State's fallen off.
Right. Illini Bubba says, don't count out Iowa. And you are exactly right, Illini Bubba. I mean, Iowa's on Oregon's schedule there as well. And that is at Kinnick. That's most likely going to be a night game. They do play USC as well. So they're going to have Minnesota this weekend and then Oregon at USC, Michigan State at Nebraska.
That's part of the
If
issue,
Iowa
though.
wins out, they'll make it too.
All those teams that have a chance maybe to only have two, they're all playing each other, though, in the Big Ten. So they're going to be knocking, causing that third loss.
Well, let's look at the college football playoff odds for the Big Ten really fast, and then we'll get out of here. Of course, Ohio State and Indiana. Ohio State doesn't even have odds anymore. You literally cannot bet on Ohio State to make the playoffs or not anymore. It's kind of funny. Illinois is sitting at plus 1,800 to make it. Indiana is sitting at minus 3,000. Iowa's at plus 1,800 as well. Michigan plus 920. Oregon plus or minus 430, sorry, not plus. USC is plus 920, and then Washington is plus 1,800. So the best odds you have there to make it are both USC and Michigan tied at plus 920. The next best is Washington, Iowa, and Illinois, all at plus 1,800. I say best ones there. Oregon and Indiana are obviously the highest. I'm saying the best ones you have there. So, yeah, we'll see. One of these big teams is going to have to fall down, and the team that beats them is also going to have to win out. So, if you think Iowa can do it, go put your money on Iowa, I suppose. They're on FanDuel. That's where we get our odds from.
Based on how the year has gone, expect a lot of chaos, which is fun. This is what people have wanted, right? They wanted more parity. Although I'm still not going to fall off saying that a blue blood's going to win the damn title, though. Because I did stats in a whole podcast on the last 20 national championships and how there's a certain level of recruiting required. And yes, I understand transfer portal, but the reality is the majority of rosters are still, of the better teams, are still recruited, right? The ones with all this transition in rosters are ones that aren't good teams. Mm-hmm. Or if you try Florida State, but look what you got from that, right? They didn't recruit good enough, and they caught lightning in a bottle, had that awesome year with a bunch of transfers, but that's no way. Recruiting still matters, folks. Believe me, very important. Don't forget that.
And I would say evaluations is what matters the most in recruiting right now. You can't just go out and try to stack up all the 5 stars because A, everybody's trying to stack up on the 5 stars, and B, you're not going to keep those guys on your team as easily, as you were able to before because of the spending and everything else. Nowadays, you have to go out, you have to get the big name players, you have to get, a 5-star or 2, maybe even 3 in your class, and then you have to do great evaluations on like the 3 stars and the 4 stars out there and say these are guys that are underrated and they're actually better than what their stars are. And that's why I think a team like Indiana could eventually win the national championship, even if they only have like 10, 7, 10 4-star guys, because there are 3 stars out there that perform really, really well. Maybe they're not first-round draft picks, but they can perform really, really well in college. You just have to be phenomenal at evaluations to make that happen.
So. That's why this is a fun year to see. If Indiana were to win it, that would break all the rules of recruiting classes and everything, man. I'm telling you, it'd be like, whoa. So,
yeah. Kurt says, what about BYU? Let me look at BYU's schedule really fast. I kind of look at BYU as kind of being what they were last year, 10-2. Probably not going to get enough credit with their wins. But if they do win out, or at least go 11-1, it's definitely possible because they have at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, TCU, at Cincinnati, and UCF there to end the year. There's a couple tough games there to end the year, and I don't know if BYU as a Big 12 team would get enough respect to lose to both Texas Tech and Cincinnati and be able to make it in. Maybe they lose to one of those and they still make it in, but I don't know.
I mean, that's as tough at Iowa State. I know Iowa State's not awesome, but they're still at Iowa State, Texas Tech, TCU, Cincinnati. That's a 4-game gauntlet. If they go through that and only lose 1 game, they could make it in there. I mean, I have them ranked 13th, so it's not like
You almost needed Texas Tech to stay as like a top 5 type of team, so that way even if you lost to them, it's on the road type of stuff.
To squeeze in a second Big 12 team. Yeah.
So we'll end with Dave's comment here because I did enjoy it. I thought it was a funny one, and then we'll get out of here. Dave said Iowa was going to be out, or is going to be out at the end of the week, and I'm going to be eating bacon. Playing for the pig there. Love that, Dave. Should be a great game. CBS, you can see Iowa, Minnesota. Go ahead and give us a like, subscribe. Check Jeff out on Thursday, or premieres on Thursday night at 9 p.m. and then you can also catch it Friday morning. Catch Around the Big Ten premiering on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Have a lot of good content coming up for you guys. Week 9 preview Tuesday night at 9 p.m. We put a lot of content out there for you guys, and you guys are watching it, and we appreciate you doing that. Tell a friend, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Jeff, anything you want to get to before we get out of here?
No, thanks for letting me join today. Subbing for Zach. I should have probably. What are we doing here? What are we doing? The Big Ten, the NCAA sucks. How's that? Is that kind of like I'm supposed to do?
There you go. You're doing your best Zach impression there. Great job. So, all right. Hey, thanks everybody. Thanks to Illini Bubba for the awesome show there. Appreciate it, and thanks everybody for listening and watching. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.